How did it go?
Lovely.
Yes?
Yeah, it's a lovely building, isn't it? We were there last year. Very nice building.
Good house for you?
Great audiences.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very warm-hearted.
Well, Hank, first of all, addressing you on behalf of the Shads, welcome back to Launceston. 1961, apparently, was the last time you were here.
That's right. It was the very first tour of Australia with Cliff and the Shads. And we came down to Tasmania. It was a funny day altogether because we arrived at the hotel to discover that the suitcases, our amplifiers, etc., had been sent off to some other part of Australia. So we had to do the show in the clothes we travelled in and borrow amplifiers from a local group. And therefore the show wasn't quite what we would like it to have been, but we still enjoyed it anyway.
Well, I hope it's as enjoyable this time. Equipment's changed since then, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, it certainly has. In fact, we still haven't got the clothes back from that gig, but equipment has changed. We use basically the same sort of equipment. We still use Fender guitars, Stratocaster, Echo Box. The only difference is our amplifiers. Instead of Vox amplifiers, we're using Mesa Boogies at this time. We've been using those for about a year. That's perhaps of interest to the guitar players out there.
Right. Tell us about your current tour, where you've been so far. When did you start off?
Well, we left the UK on the 24th of January. We spent 2 weeks, or just over 2 weeks, in New Zealand. We did a concert tour right throughout the North and South Islands, and that was good fun. We came into Australia. We spent about 10 days in Sydney. We did 7 shows in Sydney, and then we moved up to the Gold Coast, 6 shows at Twin Towns, and we've since been to Melbourne, Geelong, and here we are in sunny Tasmania. I lied about the sun, by the way.
How often do the Shadows tour?
Well, we've tried to, since we started touring again in '77, we've tried to keep it to a maximum of 2 tours a year, one usually in the UK around autumn time, and one around the beginning of the year, either through different parts of Europe or, for example, here in Australia, the Far East, etc. So it's usually only 2 major tours a year.
Perhaps I could direct the next question to Bruce.
Okay.
Bruce, how have you found fans' response to your material? Do they still hoop for the old stuff, or are they interested to see what you're doing in new material?
Well, I think a lot of them have trouble bringing their wheelchairs in. But we have a very wide audience, a very wide family audience, I think. We have a lot of people who have grown up with us, I suppose, who are in their 40s themselves, who sometimes bring their kids, so you have younger kids there, you know, teenagers and things, and even younger than that. We also have people sort of over 50 and 60 who come along to see if we can still stand, I think. But a very broad audience, very broad audience. A bit like the Cliff audience. He has a very wide range of ages.
Have you found that you've had to change your act and what you say and do and how you present yourselves at all, drastically?
Not drastically, no. I mean, we obviously, we feel that we have to play a lot of the big hits that we've had. We've almost got them right now, after this sort of time. But we always play new album tracks, and we sing a lot of humour in the show. And Brian does a drum solo which can last from 5 minutes to 20 minutes, depending on how he feels.
How do you feel, Brian?
Can we just switch over then to Brian, saying that Brian, the latest recruit in the group, apart from the changes you've had in the bass line, still the new man, really, Brian, even after some 25 years.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
New. 61 I joined, and in fact this was my first trip, in 61, coming here.
How do you find playing the drums on stage now? I mean, you're getting older, it's still a fairly heavily physical and sweaty job. How are you finding it?
I'm finding it very easy, actually. In fact, easier than I did when I was younger, because I'm not worried about producing good things. I play the way I am, so I'm very comfortable with myself and my playing, so I'm enjoying it actually more.
Hank, a little while ago, mentioned some technical terms for the musos of our day. What are you playing on at the moment?
I've got pearl drums at the moment, When I first came here, I played Premier drums, and then I switched to the best drums of all, which were Ludwig. I used them for about 15 years.
You've gone back to Pearl?
Well, I've gone to Pearl because they give a very good after-sale service. Anywhere in the world, they just turn up with new drums and stands and things, and they look after me. It's like buying a car, really. You know, if you get a really good car and no one to look after it, you know, you're going to be in trouble. But if you get a kit that, you know, people can come and look after you wherever you are, it's great.
So if something goes wrong in your concert in Launceston...
It's my fault.
What's Brian Bennett doing apart from the couple of tours per year with the Shads? You're all personalities, individuals, distinct from each other, and all pursue somewhat separate careers.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
I do a lot of writing for television and film work. I've been doing that for the last 15 years. And finished my first major film score last year, a film called Terminal Choice, which is out February, March.
How did you find that? Difficult?
No, it's surprisingly easy. I've been waiting for something like that for many years. But because you get sort of, well, in England, the boys will understand this, you get pigeonholed into being one type of musical personality. You know, because of the success of the Shadows, you're the drummer with the Shadows. So when someone comes up with a film score, in the early days, they said, you know, is he the drummer with the Shadows? No, we want a composer that can write for films, you see. But I got this film through an American company who weren't too familiar with our work, you know, so I was just a writer, you know, just another writer. And I'm very happy about that.
That should open a few more doors for you.
Yeah, I hope so. New career.
What happens to the family? You're all married.
Yes.
What happens to the family when you go overseas?
Married?
Well, you know, we
That
try
was
to bring
Bruce.
them. Yeah, we try to bring them when we can. You know, last year we brought our families with us. This year I'm having a lot of reconstruction work being done in my studio. I have my own studio at home. So Hank's wife arrived the day before yesterday and dumped their children on, you know, my wife's house. You know,
Someone's got to look after the children.
someone's got to look after them, and I'd like it to be my wife.
Right. Could I just switch over, thanks Jim, to Bruce?
Okay.
Bruce, I can remember quite a few years ago, you were billed as the hard man to get along with in the Shadows, the perfectionist,
Can you believe that?
the one who had to get things right. I mean, I know Hank did too, probably you're all the same, but you seem to be the hardest chap, as I recall. Was that true, or was that just a bit of propaganda?
It's true. It's a pain in the bum.
It's true, yes, yes.
How have you changed? Or have you changed?
I haven't. I'm a perfectionist by nature. So I like things, nothing left to chance, let's put it that way. I'd rather rehearse everything to get it right than go on and hope for the best.
Has it been difficult holding the band together, not only as a band, but as three very individual personalities?
Yes, it is. I mean, we're normal sort of people, you know, but we obviously touring, especially touring, not so much when you're at home. You see, when we're at home and we're not working, we don't mix. So that when we do come back together to work, we have that sort of freshness. But we are obviously very varied personalities, and always have been. Just like any other, I mean, anyone who's in a band will understand this, because you can't just pick 4 or 5 guys out of the air and put them together, you know, sort of working together, flying together in dressing rooms, touring all the time, and expect everything every day to be sweet and light, because it isn't like that.
Would it be easier to get along with each other because you've got these separate interests and separate paths you follow away from the touring and the rehearsing and the writing? For instance, you're very much involved in songwriting and producing, aren't you?
I have been, yes. Yes, producing mainly. Unfortunately, all of us, I think, have let songwriting itself go a bit for some reason. I think we're getting a bit lazy in our old age. See, what Brian does isn't actually songwriting. That's sort of music for him, you know, background music and film, as he's already explained. But we used to write a lot of hit songs, you know, mainly in those days because we were together all the time. We were in dressing rooms, or even after a show at night, we'd take the guitars back to the hotel and, you know, sit for 2 or 3 hours having a drink and having a good time and writing. And we don't really do that anymore.
In fact, a couple of your old songs, Summer Holiday and In the Country, have been revived fairly recently, haven't they?
They have. They've actually been in the UK charts just recently, which is pretty frightening, folks.
How did you feel about that when you heard them?
Well, funny enough, one is recorded by a rat. They have a Roland rat singing Summer Holiday, which is a sort of a comedy record, but it's good to hear it. I mean, it's a different... They still use Hank's guitar riff, you know, the main riff and things, but you've got this sort of rat singing it, you know. Funny songs we write.
Right. Production, what sort of production? Mainly records?
Record production, yes. Cliff Richard and, in the early days, Olivia Newton-John, and various artists since, but Cliff's probably been the biggest success, I suppose.
Right. What's your opinion of the songs of today? Are there any different, basically, to, talking about lyrically particularly at this stage, to 15, 20 years ago?
Well, I think when we started, which was even earlier than that, songs were very light-hearted, very simple songs, very what we call Moon and June songs. You know, the rhymes were very simple. The construction of the songs were very simple. The new electronic bands are still pretty simple songs. I don't think they're as good as songs as they were in the old days, when I call the old days when we started. There are some good songs around, but I would say generally, and I don't want to sound, you all sound like your old mum and dad, you know, when you were a kid saying, well, it wasn't like this in our day. I think there were better songs in the 60s than there are now.
Could I ask the next of Hank, please?
Okay.
Hank, following on from Bruce's remarks about today's songs, there seems to have been a swing back to protest-era-oriented material. Do social crises like unemployment, for instance, have a marked effect on songs?
It has a marked effect on me. I think it has done that, particularly during the period that was called the New Wave Punk movement a few years ago. A lot of these bands came out of the street, guys who were unemployed, and they were very angry songs. There's a lot of aggression in the lyrics and in the postures of the band on stage, the way they glared at the audience, spat at the audience, over all the anger, you know, coming out. I think some of it was a little fabricated, really, by certain managers, but nevertheless, it was there, underlying. And there were songs about the situation, about the lack of ability of governments to sort out the unemployment and so forth. I'm not so sure about right at this moment, though, that there's any particular protesting in songs. I haven't noticed any lyrics. Maybe I'm missing out on them, but I haven't noticed in the last sort of year or so any particular songs of that nature.
It's a thriving industry in many respects, and it's obviously extremely difficult to be able to write and produce pop, to use the term, song. How do you do it? Is there any formula, and do you look for a certain structure or content of the song, a lyric line, a chorus line?
Well, if there was an actual formula that was a surefire success, then obviously there would be certain people who knew it would be banging out hits every time. But even the guys who produce hits regularly or write hits regularly still have their misses, their flops.
Thank you.
It's all right, Bruce. When you're writing a song, if you want to write a song for commercial usage, you have to decide whether one, you're going to write a ballad, two, whether you're going to write a song which is danceable. Then you have to establish a feel in the rhythm that you know is the kind of feel that people want to get up and boogie to. Hey, get down there, you know. And once having established that, you get to work on the song, and you've got to decide what kind of a song it is. Is it the song which would suit sort of soul-type artist, black artist, or is it more of a white feel to the tune and the way it's being sung? There's all different ways you can approach them. There's no surefire way of doing it. There's no set formula. And what you must have, usually, is some aspect of the song, what people call a hook, which people remember very quickly. They keep singing that little bit over and over again, you know. They hear it once and they've got it. And that's very important in pop songs.
What have you tried to do with your latest album, Guardian Angel?
Well, we've gone away from all of that I've just said. We've tried to get material that no one can remember, and it's been quite successful. No one can dance to it.
It's a bit hard to believe.
No, we on the new album, we decided to really, in response to a request from a lot of our fans, said, could we please give them an album of original material? Well, we've done that. We had songs, tunes sent in from different writers and publishers. We sifted through a great long list of this, and we narrowed it down to what we thought was the best material for us. And we wrote several pieces too. So we have on the album 8 instrumentals and 3 songs. The songs are very modern, 85 type songs, we think, and we've treated them in that way. And it's quite a mixture of instrumentals. There's some very gentle ones, there's some very honky ones, so it's quite a mixture, but they all sound like the Shadows, which has got to be the most important thing.
What does Hank Marvin do when you're not touring with the Shadows? What's your personal, private interest?
Well, as regards hobbies, I'd run and I play tennis and do some scuba diving. Work-wise, this year I have to write a guitar tutor for beginners. I started it about a year ago and didn't finish. I have to finish that this summer. It'll come as a book with an audio cassette so that people can play along with me on the cassette, and I'll have some backing tracks to play along with. And I think that'll be a great help to beginners, to be able to play with other musicians instead of just sitting in a room on their own.
Especially to me.
Oh yeah, it'd be fun. Bruce is going to benefit from this greatly. I've also got some TV. I'm trying to follow in Brian Bennett's illustrious footsteps and write some TV music. When I'm not doing that, I also have spent a lot of time with my religious pursuits. I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses, so that takes quite a lot of my time up when I'm away from touring and so forth.
Excuse me.
The first half of the trip, which was Los Angeles and Sydney and the Gold Coast, you know, and they missed Melbourne and Adelaide, Perth, all those sort of places, which is nice. So now she's going to see the other half.
More senior school, so it's not as easy to take them out now.
Right.
You know, you can take them out of school last year.
How old's your boy
Well,
now?
my stepson's 14.
Right.
So he's at his big school.
Right, right.
So I can hardly take him out for 6 or 8 weeks. The important things in life are coming through. See, the sandwiches have arrived.
Refueling operation.
Bruce, getting on to some personal matters, I know folk are always concerned about, or not concerned, but interested to know how your wives take your touring and being away from home. We know that Hank's wife is going to join him here in Australia and Tasmania.
Yeah.
What happens with your wife and Brian's wife at the moment?
Well, at the moment they're at home. Last year when we came to Australia and New Zealand, we actually brought them because they had a wonderful time. They came into Sydney and the Gold Coast and all that. They had about, I think it was about 3 weeks with us last time. And what's changed this year is that the kids have gone to their sort of big school now, so it's not as easy to take them, it's not really right to take them out of school now and bring them this far. I mean, Hank brought his family last year, the kids as well. My stepson is now 14, so he's at when I say difficult, he's at an important school stage, so it wouldn't be fair to bring him out of school. So my wife's staying at home on this trip.
Right. What would be the thing that most irritates you today, all of you, about the music industry, particularly your where you are in it, and the rock or the pop side? What irritates you?
What irritates me? I think in my particular case, possibly the use of video to cover a bad song. In other words, when we began, I don't want to sound like an old man, but when we began, and for years, all through the 60s, it was that the music was the most important thing. The song was the most important thing, and if fans heard something on the radio and they liked it, they went and bought it. And I think today, a not so good song can be made to look better with a video. I mean, they have a saying at home, great video, shame about the song. It's very easy to mask the music that isn't that good. That's what irritates me.
Right. Just one question for Brian. Brian, what's the most encouraging thing you're finding in the industry at the moment, as far as the shadows are concerned?
The most encouraging thing? Well,
Back to that question, Brian.
yeah.
The most encouraging thing, something that's edified you and lifted you up as far as the music industry is concerned.
Well, as regards to shadows,
Right, the shadows.
obviously the obvious answer is, you know, to come back after like 25, 26 years and still get an audience that likes to see you and enjoys your playing. That's got to be the greatest thing in the world.
And what's the thing that is interesting to you and certainly builds you up as far as the music industry is concerned?
The music industry.
Pop music industry particularly.
Well, I suppose the high tech and technology, I'm interested in new sounds, you know. There's a lot of new synthesizers and new instruments being invented and involved now, so you've got new colours. That's a great thrill, you know, for a composer to work with new colours all the time, you know.
Right. Thanks. Thank you very much. Plugging guitars in and setting up a kit of drums. It's harder to produce the product live now, isn't it?
Well, it's easier. It's easier for us. We have wonderful road. I mean, we see. This is one of the questions that Hank was talking about. We actually sound live like we do on records. We sound. That's been the plus. That's been one of the reasons I think that has helped us to last. We've been able to recreate. It's great. I think we should just play the record.